I never thought a single knock on the door could change the course of my entire life. It was late evening, the kind of quiet when the neighborhood had already tucked itself in porch lights glowing, dogs barking in the distance, and the hum of a lone car driving down the main road. I was home alone, finishing up some work on my laptop when I heard it. 3 deliberate knocks. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor needing help, or maybe even a package delivery gone wrong. But when I opened the door, there wasn't anyone there, just the dim glow of the street lamp casting shadows across the pavement. A chill rolled through me, not because I believed in ghosts or anything supernatural, but because of the way silence followed. It was the kind of silence that felt purposeful, as if someone out there was holding their breath, waiting for me to step outside. I closed the door quickly and tried to laugh it off. Maybe some kid playing a prank, I thought. Still, something about the knocks bothered me. They weren't random. They were too steady, too intentional. Almost like someone was trying to say something without words. I shook my head, pushed the thought aside, and went back to work. But the following night, it happened again. Same time, same 3 knocks. This time, I didn't open the door. I stood still, my heart pounding as I watched the front door like it might burst open. When nothing happened, I finally pulled back the curtain just slightly to peek outside. And there it was on the middle of my porch. Placed neatly was an old photograph. I stepped outside cautiously, picking it up with shaky hands. The picture was black and white, slightly faded, and it showed a group of people standing in front of what looked like a large wooden house. The strangest part, one of the people in the photo looked exactly like me. That was the night I realized I was no longer just living my normal life. I was standing on the edge of a mystery that seemed determined to pull me in. I didn't know yet if it was a cruel joke, a mistake, or something much darker. All I knew was that whoever was knocking on my door wasn't finished with me. The next day, I showed the photo to my best friend, Kyle. He laughed at first, saying it must be some kind of prank, maybe a photoshopped image. But as he looked closer, even his smile faded. Dude, this guy really does look like you. Same eyes, same nose. But this photo has to be at least 50 years old. The unease I felt the night before returned with force. Why would someone leave this at my doorstep? And how did they even get it? Questions kept circling my mind. And by evening, I found myself staring at the photo again, memorizing every detail. In the background of the picture was that wooden house. It had a carved sign above the door, but the lettering was faint. After adjusting the light and zooming in with my phone, I could just barely make it out. Hollow Pines Lodge. That name stuck with me, gnawing at my thoughts. I'd never heard of it before, but something told me it was more than just coincidence. I started searching online, digging through old archives, forums, and local history websites. Hours passed, until finally, buried in an old newspaper scan, I found a mention of Hollow Pines Lodge. It was a small hotel that operated in the late 1960s, located deep in the woods, about 3 towns over. The article wasn't about the lodge itself, but about an incident that happened there. A fire broke out one winter night, killing several guests. The lodge never reopened. But here's the kicker. The article listed names of the victims, and one of them shared my last name. My stomach dropped. It couldn't be a coincidence. I had no relatives, at least none I knew of, who had ever lived near that town. Yet here was evidence, tied to a photo of someone who looked exactly like me. That night, the knocks came again. I sat frozen on the couch, clutching the photo in one hand. This time, though, there were 4 knocks instead of 3. Slow, heavy, like a warning. When I finally gathered the courage to check the door, no one was there again. But on the porch, placed where the photo had been the night before, was a torn piece of paper with only 2 words written in jagged handwriting: "Find them." I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I made up my mind I had to go to Hollow Pines. I had to see if that place still existed, if the ruins of the lodge still stood, and most importantly, why someone was dragging me into a mystery that stretched back decades. Kyle insisted on coming with me. "If this is some psycho trying to mess with you, you're not going alone," he said firmly. I was grateful, though I didn't admit how scared I actually was. The drive out was long, winding through old highways and eventually leading us into thick woods where cell service vanished. The road grew narrow, gravel crunching beneath the tires, until finally we saw it. The remains of Hollow Pines Lodge stood in a clearing, half burned, half swallowed by trees that had grown up around it. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive, as we stepped out of the car. There was no sound, no birds, no wind, just silence. And then, I saw it. Carved faintly into the wooden frame of the doorway was the exact same symbol I'd noticed in the corner of the photo, one I hadn't paid much attention to before. A circle with 3 vertical lines running through it. I froze. It was the same symbol I had been sketching absent-mindedly for years in the margins of my notebooks. A shape I never understood, but one that always popped into my head when I was bored. I had never seen it anywhere else before, until now. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a missing piece of history. This was about me. Whoever was knocking on my door, whoever was leaving me these pieces, knew something I didn't, and they weren't going to stop until I uncovered it. When we stepped inside Hollow Pines, the air changed. It wasn't just musty. Like you'd expect from an abandoned building, it was heavy, pressing down on us like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Dust motes swirled in the faint light that filtered through the broken windows, and the wooden floor creaked under every step. Kyle shone his flashlight around, and the beam landed on the remnants of what must have once been the lobby. A counter stood half collapsed in the corner, with broken keys scattered across the floor. The walls were charred black in places, evidence of the fire that had consumed the building decades earlier. But even through the burn marks, strange carvings stood out. That same circle with 3 lines running through it, over and over again. "Man, this is messed up," Kyle whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "Why is that symbol everywhere?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding, the photograph in my pocket feeling heavier than it should. The fact that I had been drawing this same symbol for years without knowing what it was, it felt impossible. But here it was staring back at me from walls burned 50 years ago. We moved deeper inside. Every doorway we passed seemed to groan like it hadn't been opened in decades. I found myself glancing over my shoulder constantly, sure that if I turned fast enough, I'd catch someone standing there. But each time, there was nothing but empty hallways stretching into shadow. At one point, Kyle froze, his flashlight beam locked on a wall near the staircase. "Dude, look at this." Painted in what looked like soot was a word scrawled across the wood. "Return." I stepped closer, and that's when I noticed the faint smell of smoke, fresh smoke, not the lingering scent of an old fire. It was sharp, acrid, as if something nearby was burning even though nothing was. My skin prickled. We climbed the staircase slowly, each step threatening to give way beneath us. At the top, the hallway stretched long and narrow, with doors on either side. Most of them were charred beyond recognition, but one stood almost intact, its handle gleaming faintly under Kyle's light. Against my better judgment, I pushed it open. Inside was a room eerily preserved, almost untouched by fire. A bed with tattered sheets sat against the wall, and beside it, a wooden desk. On the desk lay an object that made my blood run cold. Another photograph. I picked it up, my hand trembling. This time, it wasn't a group photo. It was a close-up of a single person, and it wasn't just someone who looked like me, it was me. Same jawline, same eyes, even the faint scar above my eyebrow that I got when I was 12. But the photo was dated in the corner, January 14, 1969. How is that even possible? Kyle stammered. That's you. That's literally you. But this was taken decades ago. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat tightened. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense, but one thing was clear. Whoever was behind this knew me. maybe even better than I knew myself. That's when the knocking started. 3 loud, deliberate knocks, echoing through the hallway outside the room. The same pattern from my front door, but now, here, in a place where no one should be. Kyle swore under his breath, his flashlight shaking in his hand. Tell me that's not real. Tell me I didn't just hear that. The knocks came again. Closer this time. I forced myself to step out into the hallway, my pulse roaring in my ears. The flashlight beam swung wildly as Kyle followed behind me. We reached the end of the hallway, where the sound seemed to be coming from. There was a door heavier than the others, reinforced with iron bands. The wood was scorched, but it hadn't collapsed like the rest of the lodge. And as we approached, the knocking stopped. I reached out to touch the handle, and the instant my fingers brushed the cold metal, I felt something. Not physically, but deep inside, like a memory trying to claw its way to the surface. For a brief moment, I saw flashes in my mind, people screaming, flames swallowing the lodge, a hand gripping mine as we tried to run, and then darkness. I yanked my hand back, gasping. Kyle grabbed my arm. What just happened? You looked like you were about to pass out. I think I saw it, I whispered. The fire. Like I was there. We didn't open the door that night. We couldn't. Fear anchored us in place until we finally stumbled out of the lodge, gasping for fresh air like drowning men breaking the surface. The drive back was silent, neither of us able to process what had happened. But when I got home, the terror followed me. Sitting on my kitchen table, waiting like it had been placed there while I was gone, was another note. This one wasn't torn, but neatly folded. Inside, written in the same jagged handwriting as before, were 4 words. You can't run forever. I dropped it like it burned, scanning the room as if someone might still be there. The locks on my doors suddenly felt useless. That night, sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. And just when I thought I might drift off from sheer exhaustion, I heard it again. The knocking. But this time, it wasn't at the front door. It was inside. 3 deliberate knocks, echoing from my bedroom closet. My body froze. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The sound wasn't just in my head, it was real, reverberating through the room. Slowly, with shaking hands, I reached for the baseball bat I kept under my bed. Who's there? I whispered, my voice cracking. Silence. I inched closer to the closet, my entire body trembling. The air grew colder with every step, my breath turning visible in the dark. I reached out, gripping the handle, and yanked the door open. Nothing, just clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, empty. And then I looked down. Tucked neatly beneath my shoes was another photograph. This one was worse than the rest. It showed me, in my bedroom, standing exactly where I was at that very moment, holding the bat. The picture had been taken minutes ago. The photograph slipped from my hand and landed on the floor with a soft thud, but I couldn't bring myself to pick it up. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out. Someone had been in my house, not just in my house, inside my room, watching me, close enough to capture that exact moment. I backed away, clutching the bat tighter, every muscle in my body tense. The closet was empty, but I could still feel it, the presence. That electric charge in the air that prickled against my skin, like the room itself was alive. Kyle. I needed to call Kyle. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone, fumbling to dial his number. The line rang once, twice, 3 times before he finally answered, his voice groggy. Dude, it's 2 in the morning. What? Someone's been here. I cut in, my voice trembling. Kyle, I found another photograph of me in my room. Just now, they were here. There was silence on the other end, then the sound of rustling sheets. Stay on the phone, don't hang up, I'm coming over. I wanted to argue, to tell him not to risk it, but fear had stripped me of reason. I needed someone else there, Someone who could confirm I wasn't losing my mind. Minutes crawled by like hours. I sat on the edge of my bed, the bat across my lap, staring at the closet. I half expected another knock, another note to appear, but the room stayed oppressively quiet. When Kyle finally arrived, his headlights cutting through my window, I nearly cried with relief. I ran downstairs and yanked open the door before he could even knock. "You look like hell," he muttered, stepping inside. But when I shoved the photograph into his hand, his face drained of color. "Okay, this is beyond messed up," he whispered. "This isn't just some prank, man. Someone's playing with you." Or... His voice trailed off, and he didn't finish the sentence. "Or what?" I demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, we searched the house from top to bottom. Every closet, every corner, even the attic and basement. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no broken locks. It was as if whoever left that photo had vanished into thin air. But then Kyle noticed something I hadn't. On the back of the photograph, scrawled in that same jagged handwriting, were 2 words: Room 6. My stomach dropped. Room 6, back at Hollow Pines. "No," I said immediately. "I'm not going back there. We barely made it out last time." Kyle stared at me, his jaw tight. "You don't get it. Whoever's doing this, they're not stopping. They know where you live. They know you. If we don't figure out what's in that room, it's going to keep happening." Deep down, I knew he was right. The photographs, the knocking, the memories that weren't mine, it all pointed back to that lodge. So, against every instinct screaming at me to run, we went back. The drive through the woods felt even darker than before. The trees closing in around us like walls. Neither of us spoke much, the weight of what we were doing pressing down like a storm about to break. When Hollow Pines came into view, its silhouette against the moonlight looked less like a building and more like a tombstone. Inside, the lodge seemed different. The air was heavier, the shadows darker. It was as if it had been waiting for us. We climbed the stairs again, the flashlight beam bouncing nervously off the walls. The iron-banded door at the end of the hallway loomed ahead, the same one I'd touched before. Room 6. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. Cold seeped into my skin. The same flood of images crashing through my head, screams, fire, running. But this time, something more. A voice. "You shouldn't have come back." I stumbled, yanking my hand away, but the voice wasn't in my head this time. It echoed in the hallway, low and guttural, like it came from everywhere at once. Kyle's eyes widened, and I knew he'd heard it too. "Open it," he whispered. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to. But slowly, with shaking hands, I turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a room that shouldn't have been possible. It was pristine, untouched by fire or time. The wallpaper was clean, the bed neatly made, a single lamp glowing softly on the nightstand. It looked like someone had just stepped out minutes ago. On the desk in the corner sat a box, old, wooden, carved with that same symbol, the circle with 3 lines. I approached slowly, my breath shallow. When I lifted the lid, my heart nearly stopped. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, hundreds, all of me. Different ages, different places, birthdays, school photos, moments I barely remembered, and some I didn't remember at all. Photos of me standing in places I'd never been, with people I didn't know. "What the hell?" Kyle muttered, flipping through them. "These go back decades. This doesn't make sense." At the bottom of the box was something else. A newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline read, "Local boy lost in Hollow Pines fire. Body never recovered." And beneath it was a photograph of the boy. My stomach lurched, because the boy wasn't just anyone. It was me. Same face, same scar above the eyebrow. A perfect match. I don't understand," I whispered. "That's not possible. I'm alive. I wasn't even born in 1969. But before Kyle could respond, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang. The lamp flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. And then the knocking started again. 3 deliberate knocks, echoing from inside the room. But this time, they weren't at the door. They were coming from the walls, from the floor, from everywhere. Kyle fumbled with the flashlight, finally clicking it on. But what it revealed made my blood freeze. The photographs were no longer still. The faces in them were moving. My face, staring out, eyes shifting, mouths whispering words I couldn't hear. Hundreds of me, trapped in frames, watching. "Get out!" Kyle shouted, grabbing my arm. But my legs wouldn't move. My gaze locked on one photograph in particular, me, standing in that exact room, wearing the same clothes I had on now. And then the whispering grew louder, merging into a single voice that shook the walls. "You were never supposed to leave." The floorboards groaned, the walls closed in. The air grew thick with smoke, and suddenly, the room was burning the fire from decades ago roaring back to life. Kyle dragged me toward the door, coughing, choking. But when we yanked it open, the hallway wasn't there, just blackness stretching endlessly. The last thing I remember was the heat, the flames curling around us, and the photographs, hundreds of versions of me screaming in unison. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my bed. Morning light streamed through the window, birds chirping outside. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, until I looked at my nightstand. Another photograph sat there, waiting for me. This one was different. It showed Kyle, alone, standing in room 6, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. And written across the bottom in jagged handwriting were 3 words that made my blood run cold. "You're next, Kyle."